You know when someone buys you a gift that is just so obviously designed for them?
Oh, like completely transparent generosity.
Exactly. Like a person buying their partner this massive top-of-the-line gaming console for their shared living room, and they claim it's for the family to enjoy.
Right.
But in reality, they just wanted to play the latest releases. I mean, the intention is masked as a benefit to you, but the actual reality of the item is entirely designed around what they want.
Yeah, the gift is basically wearing a name tag with the buyer's own name on it.
It really is. And while that's just a mildly annoying dynamic in a personal relationship, when you scale that exact same behavioral trap up to the organizational level, it costs millions of dollars.
Oh, easily. Millions of dollars and countless hours of wasted human potential.
Right. Because organizations do this with software every single day. So, welcome to another deep dive. Today, our mission is to uncover why organizations, specifically like governing bodies and federated networks, consistently get technology adoption completely wrong.
And more importantly, how they can actually fix it.
Yes, exactly. Because we have a fantastic source today.
We do. To get to the bottom of this dynamic, we're looking at a highly insightful piece of source material today. It's an article titled Five Technology Mistakes Governing Bodies Make, and it's written by Isaac Dury.
Right, the CEO of TidyHQ.
That's right. He's the CEO and founder of TidyHQ, which is an Australian-owned comprehensive software platform designed specifically for managing clubs and organizations. So he has really seen this dynamic play out from the inside.
And look, if you are listening to this and thinking, well, I don't run a national sports federation, so why does this matter to me? I want you to really think about your own corporate department or your local weekend hobby club.
Or even your neighborhood homeowners association.
Exactly. Whether you're managing a massive international governing body or just trying to get your five-person team to adopt a new project management tool, the behavioral traps we are looking at today are entirely universal.
They really are. The mechanics of why technology fails in a network are the exact same everywhere.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where does the failure actually begin?
Well, the failure begins at the very root of the process. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of who the organization is actually buying the software for.
Who they think the customer is.
Right. Governing bodies, or corporate headquarters, they evaluate new technology platforms based almost entirely on what their own head office staff needs.
Yeah, they just sit in a boardroom and build a requirements list based on their own daily frustrations.
Exactly. They are looking in the mirror instead of looking out at the network they actually manage.
It's so backwards.
It is. I mean, the people at headquarters are thinking about oversight and reporting. They want comprehensive dashboards, real-time heat maps, and high-level data analysis.
Which sounds great on paper.
It does. But they completely overlook the fact that the actual users, the people at the coalface who have to interact with this system to generate that data, they are not sitting in a corporate office with a dedicated IT support team on standby.
No, they definitely aren't. And the source paints such a vivid picture of this actual end user, and it's a profile we completely gloss over. We aren't talking about a salaried data entry clerk whose entire job is just to navigate software.
Right.
We are talking about a volunteer committee member at one of, say, 200 local clubs. This is someone who has a full-time day job, a family, and maybe exactly 30 minutes on a Sunday night right before bed to do the admin work for their local community club.
And that Sunday night scenario, that is the ultimate stress test for any piece of technology.
Absolutely.
Because if a platform does not work intuitively and quickly for the volunteer treasurer at the absolute smallest, least resourced club in the network, the entire system collapses.
It just falls apart.
Because if that exhausted volunteer has to click through 7 confusing screens just to log a $20 registration fee, they simply won't do it.
No, I wouldn't do it either. I'd just use a paper ledger or a standalone spreadsheet on my laptop.
Exactly. And if the data doesn't get entered at the grassroots level, it really doesn't matter how sophisticated the governing body's dashboard is. It will just be a very expensive blank screen.
It's like corporate management buying a wildly complex commercial-grade espresso machine for the break room.
Oh, I've seen this happen.
Right. And they buy it because it meticulously tracks bean consumption metrics and water temperature variances. Management loves the data it promises.
But the users don't.
No, because it requires a literal engineering degree for an employee just to brew a cup of coffee. So what
To
happens?
just walk down the street to Starbucks.
They get their coffee elsewhere. And that incredibly expensive machines reporting dashboard shows zero data because nobody's willing to jump through the hoops to use it.
That is a perfect analogy.
But here's what I struggle to understand. The people making these purchasing decisions in the boardrooms are smart, capable professionals. Why is it so incredibly hard for the center to remember the network?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, federated systems, and really any highly distributed networks, are unique beasts. By design, they fundamentally exist to serve the network, not the center.
The center is basically a support system.
Exactly. The governing body is not the customer. The local clubs are the customer. The center only exists to facilitate, regulate, and empower those local entities.
Right.
But human nature, combined with the reality of corporate hierarchies, naturally inverts that relationship. The people with the purchasing power naturally prioritize their own immediate pain points, which is usually a lack of centralized data.
So they buy a dashboard.
They buy a dashboard. But the source provides a very clear, practical solution to break this cycle.
What is it?
Before you even look at a software vendor or feature comparison spreadsheet, you have to talk to 5 local clubs.
Just 5 clubs. I mean, that doesn't seem like a massive administrative hurdle to clear before spending hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It is a very low bar, but it is rarely cleared. And crucially, you have to ask them the right questions. You don't ask them what kind of dashboard they want.
Right, because they don't care about dashboards.
Exactly. You ask them, what is your biggest administrative pain point on a Sunday night? What takes up most of your volunteer time? What would actually make your life easier?
Work backwards from the coalface.
Yes. You have to buy for the end user first, solve their immediate problems, and then build your centralized reporting on top of that foundation, not the other way around.
Okay, so let's say an organization avoids that trap. They actually realize who they are buying the software for, that stressed volunteer. We logically move to the next hurdle, right? What are they trying to buy?
Yes. Mistake number 2.
And the source points out that this usually takes the form of the Swiss Army knife illusion.
It's so common. The procurement team will invariably sit down and say, we need one comprehensive system that does everything.
They want the magic bullet.
They do. They say, we want registration, competition management, governance, member communication, website hosting, and finance all in one box.
Which honestly sounds incredibly appealing on paper. I mean, you get one vendor, one contract to negotiate, and one login for everyone.
The theory sounds fantastic, but the source explicitly shuts this down. It argues unequivocally that you do not need one system that does everything, because no single platform actually does all of those things well.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Precisely. When a software company tries to build an all-in-one solution, they inevitably spread their development resources far too thin across too many disciplines.
Right, because coding a finance tool is totally different from coding a website builder.
Building a great accounting tool requires a completely different engineering focus than building a great email marketing tool. So you end up with a product where the registration module is merely okay, the communication module feels like it was built in 2004, and the finance module is practically unusable.
So what's the alternative?
The prescribed approach from the source is entirely different. By dedicated, purpose-built platforms. You want a best-in-class competition platform for running your events. You want a specialized accounting platform for your finances. And you connect them through modern integrations.
All right, I have to play the skeptic here for a second.
Yeah.
Because we just spent the entire first section establishing that our target user is that exhausted volunteer treasurer with only 30 minutes on a Sunday night.
Right.
Doesn't forcing them to log into a dedicated accounting platform and then log out and log into a dedicated registration platform and then a dedicated communication platform.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, doesn't forcing them to juggle 6 different software environments sound like significantly more of a headache than just suffering through one mediocre Swiss Army knife platform?
It is a highly intuitive pushback. On the surface, 6 tools sounds worse than 1. Yeah. But that assumption misunderstands the actual mechanics of how modern software integration works.
Okay, help me understand.
The sheer frustration of using one clunky, badly designed, completely unintuitive module within an all-in-one system drains vastly more time and energy than using specialized tools.
Even if there are more of them?
Yes. Because when you use a seamless, purpose-built accounting tool that is designed perfectly for that specific job, the user experience is incredibly efficient. The volunteer gets in, does the task in 3 clicks, and gets out.
Okay, I hear you on the user experience being better in a specialized tool, but what about the data? Are they like manually downloading a spreadsheet from the registration tool and uploading it into the accounting tool?
No, not at all.
Because that sounds like a nightmare for that volunteer. Who is duct taping all these different platforms together? Doesn't that require a massive internal IT team just to keep the data flowing?
10 years ago, yes, it would have. But today, the architecture of the internet relies on application programming interfaces, or APIs.
APIs.
Think of an API as a digital waiter in a restaurant. You are the customer sitting at the table, let's say the registration software. The kitchen is the accounting software.
Okay, I like this.
You don't need to walk into the kitchen to cook the meal yourself. The waiter, the API, takes your order, walks it to the kitchen, and brings the food back to your table instantly. These platforms are designed to silently talk to each other in the background.
Wow, okay.
So if a member pays a registration fee on Platform A, the API instantly and automatically registers that invoice as paid in the accounting software on Platform B.
Ah, so the volunteer isn't acting as the middleman between the databases.
Not at all. They aren't moving data at all. The systems communicate automatically. Furthermore, with single sign-on technology, the user doesn't even have 6 passwords.
Oh, that's a huge relief.
Right. They log in once, and they only interact with the specific, highly optimized interface they need for the task at hand. The data flows where it needs to go without human intervention.
That makes a lot of sense.
A suite of excellent, seamlessly integrated tools will consistently outperform a single, mediocre monolith because the underlying mechanics of the specialized tools are just vastly superior.
Okay, let's follow the psychological thread of an organization going through this realization. They recognize they need to buy for the local user.
Yes.
Then they realize the perfect commercial Swiss Army knife software doesn't actually exist because trying to do everything results in doing nothing well.
Exactly.
So if an all-in-one commercial platform doesn't exist, the natural human reflex for a stressed IT department is to raise their hand in a meeting and say, well, if what we want isn't on the market, we'll just build it ourselves.
The infamous build versus buy trap, mistake number 4.
Yes.
The source outlines why taking the custom build route is almost always a catastrophic and expensive misstep for governing bodies. First, the initial development of custom-built systems is astronomically expensive.
Because you're paying developers to start from scratch.
Exactly. You are hiring developers to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
But that initial price tag is just the tip of the iceberg. Custom systems are incredibly expensive to maintain over time.
Right, because commercial software companies have entire fleets of engineers whose sole job is to constantly push security updates, fix bugs, and improve features based on the aggregated feedback from thousands of global clients.
Or thousands of clients, exactly.
And a governing body's internal IT team of like 3 people cannot possibly innovate at that pace.
They cannot even come close.
Yeah.
The system becomes stagnant almost the moment it is deployed. But the most dangerous aspect of this trap is something called technical debt.
Technical debt.
Yes. The source highlights this brilliantly when discussing what happens when the key IT person, the architect who built the custom system, eventually leaves the organization.
Which they always do.
Always.
And the institutional knowledge walks right out the door with them.
Exactly. You are left holding a highly complex, entirely undocumented, bespoke system that nobody else in the building knows how to maintain, let alone improve.
Sounds terrifying.
It is. When a bug appears or when a new integration is needed, the new IT staff has to reverse engineer someone else's logic. It becomes a massive operational liability.
So what does this all mean? It reminds me of buying an older house. You're basically letting an enthusiastic amateur custom wire your entire house with his own unique electrical system.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe it works perfectly fine while he lives there, but when he moves away and you buy the house, you suddenly want to install a modern smart fridge.
And you can't.
No, because you can't just plug it in. You have to tear open the drywall and trace wires through the ceiling because none of the infrastructure matches the national standard.
Right.
And absolutely no professional electrician will touch it without charging a fortune because the underlying architecture is a complete mystery.
That perfectly illustrates the concept of technical debt. Every time you want to add a new appliance, a new feature or integration, you have to tear open the digital drywall. The cost of future changes becomes paralyzing.
So the source offers a golden rule here, right? Buy commercial, off-the-shelf software that fits roughly 80% of your organization's needs, and then adapt your own internal processes to bridge that remaining 20% gap.
Yes. That is touted as infinitely cheaper and more sustainable than building from scratch.
But I have to challenge the reality of that advice.
Okay.
Adapting your own processes for that last 20% sounds incredibly painful in practice. How resistant are large organizations to actually changing their own deeply ingrained habits?
This raises an important question, and it really strikes at the heart of organizational psychology. The resistance you are talking about is immense. It is a battle of organizational ego versus practical sustainability.
Organizational ego. I like that.
Every single organization likes to believe that their specific internal processes are entirely unique, special, and absolutely critical to their success.
Yeah, they look at commercial software and say, well, this doesn't accommodate our highly specific 7-step approval workflow for event sanctions, so we need a custom build.
We can't possibly use standard software. Our workflow is far too nuanced for an off-the-shelf product.
Exactly.
The hard truth is that 99 times out of 100, their processes aren't actually that special. They're just legacy habits.
Just the way things have always been done.
Yes, often built around the limitations of their previous outdated systems. Letting go of that last 20% requires an organization to admit that their bespoke way of working might not actually be the most efficient way. It requires a tremendous amount of humility.
Which is hard for a governing body.
Very hard. But the trade-off is undeniable. By bending your habits to fit the software's standard architecture, you gain massive stability, ongoing vendor support, and continuous commercial innovation, all without carrying the massive financial burden of ongoing development.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most brutal reality check in this entire discussion.
Timeline.
Right. Let's say our hypothetical organization has miraculously navigated all these traps. They centered the local user, they avoided the all-in-one myth, they utilized modern APIs to integrate purpose-built tools, and they humbled themselves enough to buy an 80% solution and adapt their internal habits.
A rare success story.
Right. They sign the contract, the software goes live, and management thinks the hard part is over.
They think they have crossed the finish line.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source completely shatters that illusion by breaking down the actual timeline of technology adoption. And the disparity in how time is spent is staggering.
It really is an eye-opener.
It outlines a brutally realistic timeline for these projects. The actual decision on which technology to use, that might take 2 weeks. The procurement process and contract negotiation, that takes a month. The technical implementation and data migration, maybe a quarter. But the change management, that takes a full year.
A full year of sustained effort. And change management is the specific phase that governing bodies consistently and chronically underinvest in. They treat the purchase of the software as the ultimate goal, when in reality, signing the contract is barely the starting gun.
It is such a profound irony. Think about it. We buy technology specifically to save time. We want to automate tedious processes, eliminate double data entry, and speed things up. But we completely refuse to spend the necessary year of change management required to actually realize any of those time savings. We want the shortcut, but we refuse to learn how to drive the new car.
The technology itself is actually the easiest part of the equation. Software is logical. It does exactly what it is programmed to do. People, on the other hand, do not.
No, they certainly don't.
Getting 200 disparate clubs, all run by different volunteers with wildly varying levels of technical literacy and available free time, to actually abandon their comfortable spreadsheets and change their behavior to use a new system that is incredibly difficult, highly emotional work.
So what does that year of change management actually look like in practice? Because, a lot of organizations think change management just means sending out a company-wide email that says, here's the new login link, good luck.
A mass email is a recipe for instant rejection.
Oh, absolutely.
Real change management requires deliberate, empathetic effort. It means investing heavily in comprehensive training materials, short videos, quick reference guides that really respect the volunteers' limited time.
Keep it quick and easy.
Yes. It means establishing clear, repeated communication about why this change is happening and, crucially, how it directly benefits the volunteer on that Sunday night. Furthermore, you have to identify and empower champions at the local level.
Wait, you mean finding the early adopters in the network?
Yes. Because if headquarters tells a local club to use the software, it feels like a mandate. If a neighboring club president tells them, hey, this new tool actually saved me 3 hours of my accounting this week, that is infinitely more persuasive.
Peer-to-peer recommendation.
Exactly. You also have to provide robust, highly accessible support when things inevitably go wrong. Most importantly, you have to establish real feedback loops. When the grassroots users complain that a specific workflow is confusing, The center has to actually hear that, acknowledge it, and work with a vendor to adjust it.
So bringing all of this together, it seems like there is a massive flashing sign pointing to the common thread connecting all of these missteps.
There really is.
Whether we are talking about buying for the boardroom dashboard instead of the coalface, insisting on a clunky Swiss Army knife, letting the IT department build an undocumented custom nightmare, or failing to train people on how to use the new tools, it all comes down to a crisis of perspective.
In federated sports, in distributed nonprofits, or in any widely dispersed corporate organization, the governing body is simply not the end customer. The local clubs are. The regional branches are. The volunteers are.
The people doing the work.
Yes. If an organization can deeply internalize that reality and continuously look outward, the technology decisions naturally follow a logical user-centric path. But if you get that fundamental power dynamic wrong, the result is always exactly the same. An incredibly expensive platform that absolutely nobody uses.
It really makes you evaluate the environment you work in. For everyone listening right now, take a mental inventory of your own workplace or, the volunteer groups you participate in.
Look at the software platforms, the mandatory tools, the apps you are forced to use every day.
Yeah. Are they actually designed for the people doing the heavy lifting? Or were they designed simply to generate a pretty color-coded chart for the people looking at the reports?
It is a critical lens to look through when evaluating any system you are a part of. And, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder today, drawing on a very specific, almost hidden detail in the recommended reading section of our source material.
Oh, what's that?
The source briefly mentions the structure of United States soccer. They operate on what is called a three-tier federation model.
3 tiers.
You have the massive national governing body at the top. Beneath them, you have 55 independent state associations. And beneath them, you have over 10,000 local clubs. The source rightly calls this structure uniquely hard to manage.
Over 10,000 distinct local clubs. That is massive.
So think about everything we analyzed today. If a standard two-tier system struggles this massively to successfully accommodate one volunteer treasurer on a Sunday night, imagine the compounded technology failures when you introduce a massive third tier of middle management between the national center and the local coalface.
It would be exponential.
How does an organization of that unimaginable scale prevent the dashboard illusion from completely blinding them to the reality on the ground?
That is a staggering thought. The wider the gap between the purchaser and the user, the higher the risk of failure. If you're buying a gift for someone 2 degrees of separation away, the chances of you accidentally buying it for yourself go up exponentially. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we will see you next time.